This is Robert Marglacci, the Mindshare Learning Report, Canada's Learning and Technology e-magazine, here at the Mindshare Workspace in Air Mills Town Center. And I'm honored to launch the inaugural InnovateHERs podcast series, first in a number that we will be seeing throughout the year. And along with me today is authors Barbara Kurshan and Kathy Hurley, both experienced and highly regarded business leaders who will share it for us today, some of the insight and put context to the book and the results of innovators, hers, and why purpose-driven entrepreneurial women rise to the top. Thank you for joining me, and along with Lisa Schmucki, who is the founder and CEO of EdWeb, who is our inaugural featured leader that we are speaking with today to garner some insights and inspiration around the passion for what she does on a daily basis. Thank you for joining me.
It's great to be here.
Thank you, Robert.
So talk to me about, Bobby and Kathy, about the inspiration behind InnovateHERs.
The inspiration was, of course, that we love this field and we love all the people in it. But the real inspiration came from the research I've been doing for 10 years around entrepreneurial mindset of entrepreneurs. What makes them successful? What makes them tick? How do they improve? What can we teach? What can't we teach? And of course, then I had been writing articles. I published blogs in Forbes.com. And I decided I didn't want to do another academic book. I wanted to do something that told stories. And of course, who do you go to as your friend to find the people to tell the stories? Kathy Hurley. So we got together and we decided that we could make this book fun and we would enjoy the process of doing it in terms of interviewing the people. We had a great time on every single interview. And it was more of like we were sitting around our, dining room or living room and having a great glass of wine with some friends. So we interviewed these women, and that's what was the inspiration behind the book. We wanted to tell stories about women and what their entrepreneurial mindset was.
Well, wonderful. Kathy, talk to me, and I'm amongst legends here. If you don't know, you can Google the names that you see on the screen. And Kathy, incidentally, was my senior vice president when we worked for Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, on Shark's Tank and in Canada Dragon's Den back in the day, the learning company. And here we are still. It's about community. It's about relationships, Kathy. And talk to me about the response to the book so far. What kind of feedback have you got?
We're really getting terrific feedback. I just want to agree with Bobby on that. Telling stories is that people love to see themselves in other people, especially successful women. So by talking to these women of different ages and different ethnic backgrounds from all over the world, these people who are the readers can really relate to some of the traits and skills that make entrepreneurs. And there's not a place that I think Bobby and I go that people don't come up and say, I just read your book. I love it. I'm going to share it with my staff. We have companies coming in saying they want to do book clubs within their company.
Cool.
And get us to talk to it. So it's really exciting. It's you feel like you're part of something that's bigger than you. And I think sharing that kind of information has been great.
What are some of the common themes that you've seen amongst the women that have been featured internationally? You were very mindful of diversity and inclusion as well, which I was really impressed with. Talk to me about some of the common themes amongst these awesome entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So we looked at lots of themes and we dissected the data upside down, up and down. And Laura, our writer and researcher on the book, helped me look at all the data. But I immediately, after 10 years, saw some themes running through, and they came out in the book through the interviews. And the three themes, and then the last one is around mentorship, which Kathy can talk about. But the three themes that really came out quite profoundly was first that women take more calculated risk than men. They're always risk takers if you're an entrepreneur in any field, whether you're in a foundation, the government, or in your classroom. You're taking risks, but women think more carefully about it. And I'm not suggesting one way is better than the other. We have successful men entrepreneurs, but it changes the way you think about risk. And that came out in every single story. The second thing we found, which is that women have the very high self-confidence. Again, all entrepreneurs do. But what came out is women often, and every single one of the women in the book at some point in their journey story, felt like they were an imposter. They had the imposter syndrome. They didn't think they should be at the table. Somebody had said, overlook them, even though they're the one that's sitting at the table that gave the best idea. And then clearly the other person, the man at the table, said the same thing. And you would have thought he just spoken wisdom that the woman had just spoken. So we would saw a lot of that and heard a lot of good stories around that, and some sad and some quite poignant. And the third thing we learned was women clearly, as we would expect, have more personal sensitivity, more empathy. But what came out in the stories around that is that they fired people better. They fire people by saying, this isn't a right fit for you. Let me help you find your next job. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard from women that say the boss that fired them became their best mentor going forward. But a man, on the other hand, will say, I'm reorganizing, you just don't fit. Not that it's not kind, but it's just a whole different filter at how they look at the story. And along with that empathy, women have teams that stay with them longer, and they have more collaborative teams. It's just a style, and it changes the way that they're successful. And one of the interesting data around that is that women return 76 cents on the dollar if they get venture money, and men return 31 cents on the dollar. That's an amazing fact. And of course,
Wow.
it get much publicity because the N of each size is too skewed. But it is clearly that women are more thoughtful about what they're doing. And then the thing we learned was that every one of the women in our book had mentors. And we learned some fascinating facts.
Absolutely.
And Kathy's the mentor extreme.
Kathy's been a great mentor of mine for some 25 plus years, so I could relate to that. And I like the notion of having the impact that women can have on male entrepreneurs, right? There is a reciprocal relationship there, isn't there?
There definitely is. When I was at Pearson, it was very interesting. The last day that I was there, they had a celebration. It was a sales meeting. They asked me to say a few words to the group, and at the end, I said, now this is 7 years ago, but I did say, please take my email, take my phone number, call me anytime if you want, you want to help in anything. And for me, it was quite sad that 6 young men came up, and it wasn't that I didn't have great female relationships, but again, it's going back to what Bobby said. Women are just, they're busy. How do you fit something else into the playbook? It's a little different now that I think women can learn from other women. I had one woman mentor in my life that was very, very important. But I think they're really nervous sometimes about going up and asking, do you mind talking to me? Would you be my mentor? Where a guy is like, man, right there. I think you're someone I need to know, and I want to know you, and I want to learn from you.
Amazing. Dr. Kurshan, do you have any thoughts to share on that note?
Yeah, I think, and I'm going to share Kathy's story so she can jump in, but when we interviewed the people, we asked in our book whether who do they think in their parents was their mentor, their mother or their father? And we clearly expected the answer to be, as Kathy had found in her readership book, that it would be their father. It turns out that the majority of the women that we asked everybody the question, and the majority said their mother. It was very interesting when they thought about entrepreneurial skills they'd learned and who their mentor was or their role model was. It was their mother. In many cases, it was because they saw their mother juggling multiple tasks, working, taking care of kids, planning meals, managing them. And in many cases in our book, they came from diverse economic backgrounds, and particularly those that had either come from single mother families or from lower income families were more inclined to say their mother over their father.
Thank you for that. Let's turn over to Lisa Schmucki, founder and CEO of EdWeb. And talk to me, Lisa, about your career trajectory in how you grew in, this entrepreneurial mindset. Was this something that was nurtured over time? Is it partly nature? What's your perspective on entrepreneurship and startups?
Well, one of the things I really enjoyed about just starting this journey, I really feel like it is a journey of talking to Bobby and Kathy, beginning with the questions that they asked in the interview and the things to reflect on, and sharing some of the research that they had done already. One of the things that I became aware of is just this idea of, it took me some time to even think of myself as an entrepreneur, because I think it's that purpose that really comes first. You're driven by solving a problem or seeing change that you think you can make to do something better. And then it isn't until a period of time, and I think that really, for me, was very much through this process of being interviewed for the book, that, oh, I guess I am an entrepreneur. And what does that mean? And maybe that goes back to whether or not we have the confidence to see ourselves in that role and really accept that that's what we are. So from a young age, I was always changing things. And Kathy, when you, in that recent book chat that we had this week, put up some of the traits and skills of an entrepreneur, you had something in there about nonconformity and independence. And I think in the workforce, I was a little bit of an annoyance to some of my bosses and managers, because I was always pushing to do things differently. And then as I got older, I did kind of toy around with the idea of starting something. But again, going back to that risk issue, I was just so very cautious about doing that. I actually raised my daughter as a single parent. My husband passed away when my daughter was 3. Yeah. And so I was really focused on maintaining my income and my job and all that for a period of time. So it wasn't until literally the month after my daughter graduated from college that this idea kind of came around at the same time. And then I made that calculation that this was a point in time when I could do it. And I also thought about the funding side, where I didn't
because you have an accounting background. So
well, yes, true, I do.
So.
And I didn't think that the VCs or any of these, investment companies would fund an older woman with an idea that back in the time, this was 14 years ago, people would say, your idea is what? They didn't really kind of get it. So I figured I needed to be scrappy and bootstrappy and figure out how to make it work. And I just feel very fortunate, because if there's something that's helped me a lot, and it kind of gets to that confidence issue, I stopped asking myself if I thought I could do something, and just to think about whether or not I wanted to. And every day with this idea, I would wake up and ask myself, do I want to do it today? And when you're aligned to that, your purpose like that, it's kind of incredible how everything else aligns.
Absolutely.
So I've really appreciated the opportunity to reflect on this. And I know a number of other women in the book. And
there it is.
And yes, here it is. This is the hard copy version. It's also available in paperback at your favorite store.
One of those.
And I know a number of these women, but to be able to read their stories has really been wonderful to learn that about them as well. So, and the other women too.
About the book, I'll share one of our other people, that one of our reviewers of the book, Coco Brown, who runs Athena. We're doing a podcast for her, and yesterday we were having a prep session, and she said they'd had mail thieves, and her book, the envelope to which we'd sent her book, we sent everybody a book that helped us, and she said they opened up the envelope and took the book and left the envelope. So she wanted to know if I'd send her another copy. So I wonder what they're going to do with our book.
Right.
Lisa, I just want to say something that, purpose-driven, I mean, you are one of the most generous people in the industry. I mean, you do share with so many different associations, but how did you feel after 14 years when you got the Best Software Award from Innovation? And I happened to be there that night. I was like, oh my gosh.
I know. It really was amazing. So, I mean, we're just thankful. Our community now has over 1 million educators. And the purpose has always been to be sustainable. right? Because I just think that's the most important thing. And the goal has never been to, be extremely profitable or whatever, but we're very sustainable and have a big impact. And so when you get recognition and you've taken that approach, it really means a lot, because sometimes you haven't necessarily done it the way everybody else has done it, or thinks about it. So it really means a lot.
Wonderful. Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah.
We've got
Okay,
you.
because my headset
You have
just
3 women. You think we're going to give you a chance to talk, Robert? Get
That's
serious.
right. I'm outnumbered, but
We can cover for you.
so I just had to quickly adjust my sound system when my headset went down, but I'm back. So I was going to ask you about your elevator pitch, and I love the notion of purpose driven, and it's really about solving a real problem. This week, Kathy and Lisa and I were at the ERDI Education Research and Development Institute in Baltimore, where we sat as advisors and met with startups, and to hear their stories was fascinating, and to give them advice, having been through what we've been through over the last 25 plus years, 30 years, in my case, in ed tech and education, is so important from a mentorship perspective. But I didn't catch whether you gave your 30-second elevator pitch, Lisa, or less around.
Mine.
Yeah, and what the inspiration was. How did you? That's the key, right? The key is to look at
And Bobby's got a lot of experience in that, because of the program at the University of Pennsylvania, entrepreneurial program.
That's
what
right.
she's done. Listening.
And I was one of the advisors on one of the challenges last year, and I love that inspiration you provide, Bobby. And so having that perspective as an entrepreneurial mindset, to really, it is about problem solving. So you saw a challenge that, and being in the ed tech space specifically, you talked to me about how that evolution occurred.
Well, it actually came from the fact that I, unlike Kathy and Bobby, I was never a teacher in the classroom in any way. And I actually felt very handicapped by that, being in the education industry, because I worked with so many people who could refer to their experience teaching. Or being involved in school. So when and I worked in product development and marketing, and so you're always attuned also in those roles to want to know what's needed, right? What are the problems you need to solve that they are dealing with, or the solutions you can provide? So when my daughter, we sat on my front porch, and when she showed me Facebook for the first time 15 years ago, I don't know if you all remember the first time somebody sat down and showed you Facebook while it was still just being used by college students. It was like, what is this? A group, a friend? But I immediately, if anybody ever handed me a crystal ball in my life, that was the moment when I knew it was going to change everything, and that it was a way for us virtually to do exactly what we're doing right now, to connect with each other no matter where we are. And we could use that technology to bring exactly what ERDI does, which we were doing this week, which is to bring the solution providers and the ed leaders and any educator closer together, because that's how we're going to solve the problems better. And so that was the fundamental, basically, idea.
When I started in my career, and you said, 15 years ago, I knew this was going to change education when I went back to graduate school, and that's 45 years ago. And I realized then, when a professor said to me, and I write about this in the book, a professor said to me, we'll never use computers in education, so you can't take your qualifying exams in computer science and education. You have to do it in artificial intelligence, which was actually quite thoughtful at the time, that they put it under the AI category, but not that they thought they would be used in the classroom in education. So it is really something that's been my passion for everything I've done since then, every career step I made, even though it was in different fields of my career in ed tech, it was always geared towards the passion of doing well and doing good. And so I ran a private equity fund. I did a startup. I took a company from private to public. So I looked at all phases of this field. And one of the things that you said, Lisa, just stuck with me a few minutes ago. You listed what we describe in 7 and 8 as the inhibitors and the activators. And you talked about whether you could financially do it, what was your safety net, How are you going to make this happen? And most important, we're solving a problem. I get so many entrepreneurs that come to me with a solution, and I say, so what problem is this solution going to solve? It looks like a great solution. The technology is fabulous, but I don't know who's going to use it or what it's going to solve.
Yeah, 100%. I love the growth mindset that permeates amongst the three of you. How is that nature or nurture?
Good
question.
We asked that to every one of the people we interviewed. We asked, are you born or made an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
I think you can grow into it. I think education needs to do its part in K-12 to really nurture that growth mindset in kids as well as teachers, because as a teacher, you need to have that innovator's mindset to continually adapt to and be agile. And look at the tools that existed 25 years ago. You know, this is a tool. Paper is a tool, right? A book is a tool. You publish your book. It has to be multi-platform, and it's just an evolutionary process that, and being surrounded by, people, mentors like yourselves, that inspires me. And how important is your community, your network, and networking as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, the network is a wonderful one.
Kathy, you are the pinnacle.
That's got to be the network. Though we saw it yesterday in the meeting we're at. They had students going down as far as early elementary school who were in entrepreneur programs, and they brought the students to talk about it and all of the side benefits of communication and problem solving and financial planning. It was great. And then I was sitting next to the superintendent from Collier County, Cam Patton, and she has 91 programs in her schools around entrepreneurship at every grade level. And it's really exciting to see, the young people coming up, what they're doing.
I've seen an example of that in the Toronto District School Board, where two of the teachers who have won our Classroom of the Future Challenge introduce a business day model, startup program, where they showcase in the gymnasium their wares. All of them have t-shirts with the logos they created. And these are grade 4 to 6 kids. The pride in them pitching and sharing and the learning that they incorporate all the outcomes and objectives cross-curricular is masterful. But I keep saying to them, you need to scale this. That would be a program national that would help kids flourish, in my estimation. Bobby, you wanted to chime in.
No, I agree with you 100%. I mean, I've been doing this at Penn and incubators and accelerators and entrepreneurship curriculum from K through, colleges are just proliferating. But the real question becomes, how do we know what the learning is? It's kind of when you look at the entrepreneurial mindset profile and you look at the skills and you look at the traits, we know we can teach skills. We're not sure we can teach traits, but how do you bring those out? And yesterday, as Kathy said at the meeting, one of the superintendents had students presenting, and he kept saying, well, I'm teaching critical thinking and I'm teaching problem solving, and he is. But how do you evaluate that? Because we don't have the right assessments yet. So I think we're looking at new ways to do this. And one of the interesting stories, which is probably a good note to end on about the book, is we started out thinking we were going to look at only the learning and teaching space. But every time we tried to get the book published, they would say, well, it's too narrow. We don't want to publish an education book. And we spent a lot of time. I mean, it took us a long time to realize we were looking at purpose-driven women and purpose-driven organizations and companies. And so we think of people, we have people in the health that are looking at health education. We have people looking at social justice. We have people looking at medical and education. So we realized that purpose-driven was what was driving us, because we're purpose-driven, all three of us on this phone.
I'll include myself in there too.
And Roger, you are too. But
if you accept me as part of the club.
Yeah, we will. We will.
Well, you're going to do one on men, right? Kathy
We
had
hope.
mentioned
That's
there, so
we're so
I would
happy
be
to do it.
honored to be part of that.
I don't think we're ready to do another book, but this podcast series is something we wanted to include as part of the book. That's why we videoed the call, and we're thrilled that you're going to be the one managing and running that for us. We're just so excited to participate for this year on this.
Well, thank you. I'm so honored to host you and for this to be our inaugural InnovateHERs podcast series. Any final thoughts to share? Lisa Schmucki is the first interviewee.
Well, I really appreciate that. And I just really appreciate being asked to participate by Kathy and Bobby, because I've learned so much and I'm just continuing to learn with every one of these sessions and conversations that we have. And I think if there's one area where we can really help the most, maybe two, I would say the confidence piece. I mean, how do we have women really get the confidence to step up and move forward with their ideas? Funding also. I know we heard this week, somebody had a statistic that only 2% of VC money went to women-owned organizations. So we need the confidence and money. And I think a lot can be accomplished with those two things.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so inspired by your courageous leadership, because it does take courage to take that leap of faith, as we did when we launched this never done before incubator in a shopping mall that is in year 5. My family thought it was a little crazy, but sometimes you got to go against the grain. And
when you do and it works, it's amazing.
Yes, and that's the truth. And so we're poised for expansion. Bobby, Kathy, and Lisa, thank you so much again for your time this afternoon. I know you have super busy schedules.
And thank you for doing this. This is great.
Thank you, Robert.
And that was InnovateHERs co-authors, Why Purpose-Driven Entrepreneurial Women Rise to the Top, and our first interviewee, Lisa Schmucki, the founder and CEO of EdWeb. My name is Robert Mardlacci of the MindShare Learning Report. Be sure to check out www.MindShare Learning to get your latest issue and the book, InnovateHERs. And until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep the learning curve steep.